So Book of Boba. I figured the way we would talk about Book of Boba is we would talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because we're looking at it like a Western. So why don't we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of Book of Boba for a few minutes? So why don't you start off? I'm pretty opinionated, but we'll start off with the good. We'll at least try and be positive to a degree. So good for Book of Boba.
Yeah, and our channel, like we've said before, is about positivity, and sometimes it's hard to find positive things, but there's always something positive in pretty much everything. So for the good for me in the Book of Boba, ironically, was the Mandalorian. I really liked, I think it was episode 5 and 6.
Where Boba has no dialogue.
Which also
or he's not in it.
Is ugly to me because it's supposed to be a show about Boba Fett. But anyway, I thought the Mando episodes were really, really good. I thought it was cool to see Luke, but then when we get into bad and ugly, I have some issues there as well. But overall, those are my favorite episodes. I liked seeing Mando kick butt, and I wish I would have seen more of Boba like Mando. That's what I was expecting of Boba, and we didn't get that in Boba, but I guess we got it in Mando.
Is that all you have for good? There's literally nothing about Boba. Any good about Boba in his own show?
Next question.
Next question. That's funny. Okay, well, for me, the good, I actually do have some good about Boba. You know, there's parts I really like. Obviously, when he's in the slave one, and you know, and he's just blasting up the Nikito bikers. You know, that's really awesome. I liked that a lot. You know, in this last episode, you get to see Boba and Mando fly around with the jetpacks. You know, I did like that. There were some action sequences I like. When he goes to the cantina, you know, and tears it up with them. That was super cool. You know, obviously, like we said, the Mando episodes were the good for me. You know, honestly, we'll get into this maybe in the ugly. You know, as we continue this journey with, you know, Disney, Star Wars and stuff, honestly, I would probably skip over most of Boba, and I would just go to episodes 5 and 6, maybe 7. But that being said, there it's not a complete, like, abysmal failure. You know, there is good in the series, and I think we'll get into kind of like where people have some issues. So when we get to the bad, I feel like this is where we're going to spend a lot of time. But the bad for you in the Book of Boba, and the whole reason we're doing the good, the bad, and the ugly, is Western themed. You know, right. I feel like that's what they were going for. But what's bad for you in Book of Boba?
I think there's a lot of, you know, little things, but overall I can sum it up in one thing. And that's, I guess, that I expected more of Boba. Even though we don't see a lot of him in the other movies, a lot of necessarily screen time, he has a reputation, and I didn't feel like that reputation carried over into this series. And obviously I know he was recovering, and there's things like that, but it was even in his dialogue, he'd say a lot of things that just weren't Boba to me. Obviously I love good guys, but Boba's supposed to be not really a good guy. That's not the point of Boba Fett. You know, he's a bounty hunter who's has a reputation of being evil and getting the job done at whatever cost.
Yeah, ruthless. Cad Bane himself called him ruthless.
Right. So I was expecting Boba Fett like from the season 2 of Mando. That's what I was expecting going in. So I had a high expectation for that. And then when I just continually kept seeing him get beat up and having to be saved by the biker mods, and Fennec's awesome. But I just feel like Boba should be able to hold his own as well, or be able to contribute to the fight, not always having to be saved. So that's overall, like, I can pick moments, but I think that encompasses everything. Is I just wanted to see Boba be BA. I wanted him to see the Boba Fett that we've been hearing about for 40 plus years, this renowned ruthless bounty hunter who got hired by Darth Vader, and Darth Vader had to tell him, don't disintegrate people. Like, where was that Boba?
Yeah, I feel that's fair, for me when I'm looking at the bad. I think what it comes down to, in my opinion, I think it was bad storytelling. I think episodes 5 and 6 were great, but for me, like when I'm looking at it objectively with Boba, I mean, when it was announced, and when we saw the end cap at the end of season 2, Mando, I was like, this is gonna be insane,
it's gonna be wild. And
I was trying to avoid trailers and everything, and then the trailers started coming out, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna be really cool. And then I think maybe the ugly side in a moment is that they hyped it up. Lucasfilm, I think they hyped it up too much, because they're like, the trailer, I guess Robert Rodriguez, like the trailer is like, what did they say? It's only from like the first episode or whatever.
Right.
And so that, that was just a lie straight out, because it wasn't. But for me, the storytelling, you have Boba who declares himself to be the crime boss, right? Or the crime lord, whatever he calls himself.
Pretty kind crime lord at that.
But then he never deals with crime. He never commits crimes, and he ends up just destroying Mos Espa, and it's like, these are my people. And it's like, they don't even know who you are. They turned against you. And then when all is said and done, he's just like, I think this isn't for me. Like, bro, you've been in it for like not even a week. What are you talking about? Like, you're in this thing and you just dip. So for me, that was bad. There's a lot of little things. I just kept getting aggravated. So I think little things became bigger for me, mountains in a molehill, or molehills in a mountains kind of thing. But now if we get into the ugly, where do you set on some things that you would consider ugly?
Again, I'll kind of just go over like the main big things for me.
We could nitpick.
Right, and that's not necessary. We don't need to nitpick everything. But overall, I think the ugly for me in the Book of Boba Fett was that I know where it's leading, and I had hope that things would change, and it doesn't appear that way. I was hoping for a retcon of the sequels, or even an alternate timeline, the world between worlds, worst case. And I just, after watching the Book of Boba Fett, I've lost all hope on that. And
they've crushed your soul.
Well, I don't know. I've said time and time again how, as a child, like, I looked up to Luke Skywalker. I looked up to Leia and Han and Chewie and these characters, and then to just kind of see how they got treated in the sequel. I've been hoping since even The Force Awakens. I originally liked The Force Awakens, but even when I first watched, I didn't like how Han went back to his old ways. He had this development in 4 through 6, and then that just disappeared, I guess, and he reverted. And so I was just having hopes that maybe Grogu would become the first student, and things would change. And so that's the ugly to me, is I guess that's always going to be there. I can't really enjoy things as much because I know where they're going. And as we've talked about before, especially when I was pregnant with my son, I got very emotional and started crying about how Disney ruined Star Wars. And so I had hope, and I mean, part of that's just hormonal, but it's also what's inside of me. So it all came out. So I think that's the ugly for me, is no matter how good I guess the show could have been, if they're not going to use the world between worlds, or they're not going to retcon, I know where it's leading, and that makes it harder for me to enjoy things, sadly. No, that's depressing, and we try to be positive, but it's the truth.
Yeah, and we decided, what we're gonna do is just cover the new stuff in whole when it comes out, because then we can talk about it kind of a little more objectively.
Right.
And for me, the ugly, I think if the bad for me was bad storytelling, I think the ugly for me was so many missed opportunities to do things really, maybe not well, but entertaining. like, I just thought of this. Danny Trejo. They literally did nothing with Danny Trejo. Nothing. They pull him in. He has this cameo. They could have developed. I mean, it's cool when the Rancor comes out, right? And even say what you will, about like the Rancor getting like kind of beat up, and apparently it's impervious to attacks from droids and things. But like, it could have been so cool. Even gave us like a montage of like bonding with the Rancor. It's just kind of like, okay, you have this cool thing, and then it's gone.
Right.
Ugly for me, a missed opportunity. Instead, they focus so much on the mods, which I cannot express more. I hate the mods.
They're like the Martez sisters to you.
I think that was just a huge misstep, and I envy people who like them. And the fact that they turned Fennec into a mod, I'm like, oh, come on. And then they're turning Cobb Vanth into a mod. I'm like, no, stop. Just stop. And
well, to be fair though, Fennec probably wouldn't have made it. They had to, if they wanted her to be in the show, they kind of had to get creative.
I guess, but the mods, that's the way they went.
I think though, if there wasn't the teenage mods, you wouldn't have had a big of a problem with Fennec being a mod.
I don't know, that tattoo parlor scene was pretty atrocious. That was pretty bad. Because for me, okay, missed opportunities, I think missed opportunities, and then in addition to that, it just didn't feel like Tatooine. Most Espa had like, almost like the Canto Blight kind of like little like casino, parlor, speakeasy kind of place that just, I don't know, it just felt too clean, and it just felt too weird. And then those stupid Vespas, they're so bad. They're so
try not to mention those.
They're so slow, and whatever. And then like that guy, he just reminded me of like Doctor Who. He always had like a suit and tie, and he it was like, I don't know, the preppy white guy on the mod.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then there's just kind of like Robert Rodriguez, his style just didn't connect in this one. I really like him as a director, but it just didn't connect. But I think, not to just keep beating this dead horse.
Yeah, let's get to something more positive.
A final thought I have, and I think this is really important, the excitement I felt when Din was on screen and his story, I'm like, that was palpable. I'm like, that was real. That was good storytelling, and something strong was going on there. But then when, even like Luke and Ahsoka, and I know they're probably saving things for Ahsoka and her show and stuff, right. But then, and I don't believe they're going to retcon the sequels and stuff. But then even Luke, when Luke's talking about attachments, and it's like, bro, have you guys not seen the end of episode 6? Attachments is what saved Anakin with Luke. Like, are you kidding me? And then he reverts back to the old Jedi ways
that failed,
utterly failed. And it's like, why? And the whole choose. You could get into all of that, but then when Grogu chose the chainmail, when he chose the shirt, and then Luke just sends the baby, in the friggin' X-wing alone.
R2, he's a good chaperone for a droid. I don't know that I'd send my son off alone with a droid, but if I had to choose a droid, it would be R2.
When you're like, oh, he's remembering his memories about Order 66 and the trauma, and then there's this attachment, and you're like, I'm done with you, kid. Get out of here. Just stick you in an X-wing, hit autopilot. I don't know. That for me is kind of the ugly.
Right.
So, granted, obviously, we're a little jaded about this, about this show.
That's why we try not to talk about this kind of stuff too often.
Yeah, but there are positives, and I think the positive will be Mando season 3. But overall, a ranking for this, and then we'll move to chat. We'll move to popping some people in that are waiting. So, what's your ranking? Boba season 1, if there is a season 2 or whatever. Who knows?
I don't. 4.5 out of 10.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, honestly, for me, I think. Man, I think I'm right there, like 4.5, 5 out of 10. I'm right there too. you know, and it sucks to be so harsh and critical for it.
Yeah.
But Boba Fett didn't feel like Boba Fett. The Mando episodes are what prop it up for me, honestly.
But then there's no Boba in that.
Yeah, and that's a problem. I think objectively as a whole, the Book of Boba... Okay, here's my theory on the Book of Boba. And then this will be it, and we'll semi-move on. My theory for the Book of Boba is that Mando was actually supposed to come out when Boba came out, and instead what ended up happening is stuff with Gina Carano, Pedro Pascal, Pablo Hidalgo, all this stuff, right? The politics of Hollywood. All that stuff that was happening was creating some production issues in addition to filming issues and things like that. So I think what they did, episodes 5 and 6, I think we saw Mando season 3, what they were going to do at the beginning. And I think they had a plan for a Book of Boba show, but then I think they kind of just like flipped the script and were like, let's get this out really, really quick. And I think we were just seeing the product of a rushed timeline.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate. So I think that's what happened. I could be completely just pulling things out of my butt. I don't know. But I feel like that's what's going on. So, you know, I think there's some potential, but I think overall this show just missed. And the fact that I like Visions more than I like Book of Boba Fett, that's got to be an issue.
And we haven't even finished Visions.
I know. That's an egregious sin in and of itself.